All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. We got week number 9 in the NFL. In today's video, we're going to go through the Sunday slate. So I'm going to dive into each and every game on Sunday. I'll give you my prediction on the side. I'll give you my prediction on the total. We'll talk about any other plays like player props that we like within each game as well as we break it down. But as always, guys, make sure to keep an eye down on the pinned comment of this video. That's where you're going to find all of my final plays, so I'm actually rolling with myself. If that does interest you, it's absolutely free down in the pinned comment. All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. I tell you guys I'm a dummy all the time. They don't suck. They've just been sucking. Get them down to -3, 4. More juice than Jose Canseco in his prime. Tell me you're new without telling me you're new. So don't go jumping down my throat in the comments, right? If you want to fade me, or if you do want to ride me, this still leaves a bad taste in my mouth, right? And remember, more chins, more wins. Now, before we do dive into today's video, I want to ask you guys to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you are new. There's also a new feature on YouTube called hyping the video. If you wouldn't mind hyping it if you're on mobile, go ahead and do that as well. And let me know all of your favorite plays for this fine Sunday down in the comments. Obviously, it helps me understand what the community is riding with and rolling with, but it helps a bunch of other people who may be looking for some additional angles and some additional insights on these games. So drop your favorite plays down in the comments. Let's go ahead and dive into game number 1 here. We're starting it off with the Bengals taking on the Bears. Right now, Bengals 3-point dogs at home, total sitting at 51.5, which does seem like a pretty high number for these two squads, I guess, offensively. But then when you think about the defensive level of each of them, it's not all that shocking, right? In terms of if we go from a side perspective, I don't mind the idea of the Bears in a bounce back spot here. I'm not the biggest Bears fan in terms of the body of work they put together this year and or where Caleb Williams is as of right now, but this defense on the Bengals side is obviously very, very bad. And let's not forget that this Bears team did rattle off 4 wins in a row. Now, it was Dallas, Las Vegas, Washington, New Orleans. But are the Bengals anything different than that level of competition? You know what I'm saying? So I do like the idea of, the Bears winning this one by more than a field goal. It's also worth noting that this is not a Bengals squad that's going to apply too much pressure, which is a good sign for Caleb Williams. His completion percentage when pressured drops down to 41.9%, DVOA negative 60.1%, EPA -20. So no pressure is a good thing for Caleb Williams. When it comes to a total, I kind of like the idea of a Bears team total over. In fact, that might be something that I like even more than the spread, because again, I'm not trying to really back this Bears defense. I'm going to lean Bears team total over as well as them minus the 3 points from a player prop perspective. And I probably should have mentioned this at the top of this game. Everybody and their grandmother's ex-boyfriend is questionable for the Bears here. Swift, Adunze, DJ Moore, Zacchaeus, Cole Kmet, all these guys are questionable. So obviously we don't like the Bears as much if half these guys get ruled out. If we're playing here, I do like the idea of DeAndre Swift. They're going up against the worst rushing defense in the entire league from a yards per game perspective, and I believe like the 6th worst from a yards per carry perspective. So I do like the idea of DeAndre Swift having a decent game overall, both through the air and on the ground. I think that he could do some damage. Next up, we're looking at the Lions taking on the Vikings. Now, the first thing that I want to note here is I think I like the under in this spot. I know that's kind of crazy with such a high-powered offense like the Lions, but I do think that this is a decent enough defense on the Viking side of things, and they are a team that is honestly stopping the pass pretty well, right? Like, this isn't an easy matchup for the Jared Goff and the Lions from a secondary perspective. Now, we're getting J.J. McCarthy back on the Viking side of things. Does that matter? I mean, hopefully it does, because Carson Wentz didn't look all that great. If this is going to be an under in what I think could be a sloppier game than most people may think, I might lean towards the Vikings. I'll sound the psycho alert alarm, and I'll admit they're nowhere near the team that this Lions team is, but this isn't a 6.5 point spread. This is a big number at 8.5. Now, the reason being is you look at this running attack from the Lions, right? They run a lot of man duo run splits. Well, this is the top 10 defense in terms of run stopping that type of scheme on the Viking side of things. Rushing yards per carry, they're just middle of the pack, so not all that great. But again, I don't think that anyone really has an easy matchup on the Lions side. So both of those, sides, the over as well as the Lions, kind of come from that point that I think Minnesota's defense shows up here. Also throw in the fact that we're going to see a lot of zone out of this Viking squad, right? And a lot of pressure. weirdly enough, Jared Goff's been better against man so far this year. And it makes sense. He has a lot of man beaters on his team. Against pressure, which we should get a decent amount of, 51.7% completion rate, 5.2% interception rate, negative 80% DVOA, and a minus 37.5 EPA. Jared Goff may not be in the best situation here whatsoever. You also have a team that is, top half of the league in takeaway percentage, as well as red zone TD percentage defensively. It's crazy. I sounded the psycho alert alarm, but I'm looking at the under and the Vikes in this spot. Now, I should mention that I don't think that there's many guys on the Viking side of things that are going to look all that special, including Jordan Mason and whoever's in at running back. I think this Lions defense will eat them up. So yes, I do lean Vikings, but it's more so from not that many points being scored in this game perspective than it is that I think the Vikings will just absolutely go off. I want to make that abundantly clear. Now, guys, before we do move on with the rest of the games, I want to talk to you about Underdog. If you have not tried out Underdog yet, you are absolutely missing out. First and foremost, you'll get a gimme pick, 0.0 yards from Josh Allen. He can pass for it, he can run for it, 1 yard in this game, and he cashes this square. But I think, and it's debatable, but I do think that is the better deal that they're offering. New customers, you can play just $5. Yes, just $5. You're going to get $100 in bonus funds and bonus entries. How about that? You take $5, you say, here you go, Underdog, and they go, how about 100 of those bad boys right back at you? Go check it out, guys. That link will be down below in the description, as well as the pinned comment. Make sure to use code GUYBOSTON when signing up and depositing to make sure you unlock those deals, but go utilize that. I don't know how long this deal will last, but play $5, get 100. No brainer. Sounds like a no-brainer to me. Check it out. That link, again, will be down below in the description, as well as the pinned comment. Here we have an interesting one. We got the Packers taking on the Panthers. Now, this Panthers team has definitely surprised a lot of people this season. I felt like just looking at social media, I was the only one that liked the Bills last week, and I'm damn glad I did. We had them on the spread, and they ended up taking it home. But I do think that this Panthers team has put themselves on the map to some degree. They're 4-4 this year. Even that is somewhat of a feat for this squad, but they're going up against the 5-win Packers. Is what they've done good enough to be able to compete in this spot? Because we know this Packers defense, will send a decent amount of pressure, but play a lot of zone. How is Bryce Young going to be in that spot, right? In terms of, the running game, Rico Dowdle, Chuba, what's going on there? This is one of the better run defenses. I'm not seeing a clear-cut way that this Panthers team stays in this one. The problem is 13.5 points is 13.5 points. So I think I do lean towards the Packers, but the only way we probably get this one down is maybe some sort of a teaser in this game. If we were to get the Packers minus 6.5 and that total all the way down to 38.5, I think that might be what we're looking at here. And I like the over, so I like that over 44.5. But again, the Packers defense could rain some hell on this Panthers run game, which is going to be a massive part of the success they've had. But they do play a lot of zone, and we know that about the Packers, right? They'll sit back in zone and hope that their, pressure gets to you. This is a Bryce Young that has been good against zone this year, right? 6.3 yards per attempt on the season. Well, I guess just versus man, 4.2. So that 6.3 is very good, right? Against zone, he has a 68.2% completion percentage. That's not the greatest number, right? But against man, it's 46.4. Same thing with interception rate, DVOA, EPA. All these advanced metrics say that against zone, he should be pretty good. So yeah, I do like the idea of the Panthers at least contributing points-wise to this, but I don't know if I love them sticking around in this one all that much. 13.5 points, maybe. I'm on the fence there. But if we can get the Packers at a lower number in some sort of a teaser with the total or same game parlay with a player prop, something like that, I think I'd much prefer that. So I'm going to lean towards the Packers as well as the over, but I'd love to massage those lines a little bit. All right, we got the Texans taking on the Broncos. I've looked at this one and swirled around and really have gotten a little confused. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. First and foremost, I like the Denver defense more than I do the Texans defense. Just from a player personnel perspective and everything like that. I know that might be kind of crazy because this Texans defense is something to write home about, right? First, in terms of points allowed per game. In terms of passing yards, they're top 5. Rushing yards, they're top 5 as well. Obviously, a very, very good defense. Denver's right around there. I think I'm going to believe in Bo Nix and the Denver offense a little bit more here in this spot, though. And I know it sounds weird. Like I said, I've gone back and forth in this one, too. But this is a Denver team that plays so much man. And CJ Stroud against man, YPA goes down, his completion percentage goes down. I just don't see it from him. And we also know they're going to bring home pressure, right? Second in pressure rate, ninth in blitz rate. In terms of his yards per attempt versus pressure, 4.6. Versus blitz, 6.1, which isn't terrible, but it's definitely lower than his season average. Completion percentage, 57.4 against pressure, drops down to 65% against blitz. Interception rate jumps up to 3.7% and to 3% against blitz. And then the negatives in the DVOA and EPA aren't even funny. So I do think that we have a little bit more, pressure coming CJ Stroud's way than we may have even seen just a week ago or something like that, right? So yeah, it kind of is a toss-up. I'll give you that. We noticed like last week against San Fran where they went 26 to something like, they won by 2 scores or so. They didn't really pressure him as much as I think this Denver team's going to pressure him. And that is how you kind of hit the Achilles heel of CJ Stroud. So I'm going to lean Denver in this spot. That total at 39.5, I'm not going to sit here and say that Denver's going to put up 40,000 points, even though their offense has looked pretty good last 2 weeks. 33 points against the Giants, not the best defense. 44 against Dallas, not the best defense. If we're giving flowers anywhere for this Texas team, I feel like I've already done them the justice they deserve here. It is their defense. So I don't think Bo Nix is going to absolutely go off, but I do think the Denver offense is going to be a little bit more dynamic than we may see this Texans offense look. Also jumping in here, I should have mentioned too the injuries on the Texans side of things. We're still waiting to see if Nico Collins will play, if Christian Kirk will play, if Dalton Schultz will play. So there's some serious injuries from a, who is CJ Stroud going to be throwing to perspective as well. So I figured that's definitely worth noting. All right, Patriots taking on the Falcons. This is a tough one. I chuckle when I say it. If you guys aren't aware, I'm a big Patriots fan. The Falcons coming off of last week getting smoked by Miami, right? New England smoking Cleveland, and this New England team has been very, very good now for 5 straight weeks? They're 6-2 on the year. This Atlanta team I was pretty high on, right? It just seems like a perfect storm for a letdown spot for this Patriots squad, because you're not going to find one Patriots fan out there, including myself, that has anything negative right now to really say about this squad. So to win by, 5.5, if we can get Atlanta at 6 or, hell, we wait this one out, get it at 7 if it goes in that direction, I could almost see that happening. So you know what? Let's sound another one. A psycho alert alarm here. Kind of like the Falcons. Again, it's like how many numbers have I referenced in this spot or anything like that? None. I just think that this is like a trap game against a team that I don't think is of the likes of Tennessee, New Orleans, or Cleveland. You know what I mean? Like this is a Atlanta team that I do think is good. Now, from an injury perspective, I do think that it is worth noting that Michael Penix is questionable, Drake London's questionable, Kyle Pitts is now questionable. If none of those guys play and you get the Atlanta B team we saw last week, then yeah, Patriots fans, including myself, I feel like I have to keep saying that, obviously do have a little bit more, of a leg to stand on in a sense. But if all those guys come back after getting spanked by one of the worst teams in the league, Miami, I just have a feeling that this team bounces back. I know it stinks to hear as Patriots fans, it even stinks to say, but I'm going to leave it at that. Give me Atlanta plus the points here. In terms of a total, I don't mind the idea of an under. I think both of these defenses are very, very underrated in terms of how the public looks at them. You have the Patriots, who are one of the better rushing defenses in the entire league right now. Now, yes, they have played somewhat of a mediocre competition, but even think back to the last really, really good running back they saw, James Cook. Where was he, right? Guy was drinking Gatorade on the sidelines. So, I mean, this is a spot in which I think the Patriots can mitigate the best player, on the Falcons here, Bijan Robinson. I think they can mitigate him. The Falcons' #1 passing defense in terms of yards per game. Drake May is probably the best offensive player, right, on the side of the Patriots. I think both teams kind of clash in the right spots to take a peek at an under here. It stinks to say, but yeah, Falcons and the under. So earlier in the week, you could have gotten San Francisco at a plus number, if I'm not mistaken. Now they're pretty heavily favored, which does make sense. Maybe it wasn't a plus number. Maybe it was, plus money for the -3, which now it's around -105. I do think that San Francisco's the spot here, especially because Brock Purdy is questionable, and I mean, everything coming out of their practices and whatnot looks like they're hopeful that he's going to play. He's been a limited practice participant. So yeah, he's estimated to return this Sunday. He's going up against the Giants, who are a very good defensive front in that sense, right? The only green flag they have on their defensive resume this year is realistically their pressure numbers and their blitz numbers. 12th highest blitz rate, 12th highest pressure rate. So I mean, things do check out. But overall, I do still think that, I'm taking this team that seems like they're a little bit more put together, right? In terms of having Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, all of a sudden their wide receivers a little bit more healthy. Yes, it does stink that Fred Warner out for a year now for the Giants, but still, I just can't really get behind, out the year for the 49ers, but I can't get behind a Giants team that has been decimated with injuries. Boom, you lose Malik Neighbors. And then it's like, all right, we're rallying behind Jackson Dart and Scatabo. Boom, Scatabo, gruesome injury. So it's really, really tough to back the Giants right now. And honestly, I hate to say this, and I hope it doesn't happen because I never wish this on anyone, but the way that they're running Jackson Dart and the way that he's running, taking hits, would it shock anybody if he gets dinged up or something like that? Like they're using him like they're using him like a chicken with his head cut off. He's not even doing the insane thing. So yeah, it's all San Fran for me in this one. I don't mind the idea of a Giants team total under. I struggle to see how they are going to move the ball really, really efficiently here in this spot. The only saving grace is, and we said it about CJ Stroud last week and he performed, is that this San Fran team has really struggled to deliver pressure. 31st through these, 8 weeks. Jackson Dart, if he can turn into somewhat of a passer, and that really hasn't even been his MO this year, if he can do that successfully, maybe they stay in this one. But again, look at the number. You're not even getting a bad number here. 49ers to win by a field goal. I'm not going to overthink it. That's what I'm going to take a peek at. Oh boy, I feel like we're going to have a lot of disagreement amongst me and people in the comment section this week because the Steelers taking on the Colts, kind of liking the Steelers in this spot. Yeah, I know it is crazy, and I'm not going to blame anyone for looking at the Colts and saying, oh, only a field goal, let's ride with it, right? But this Colts team, to me, well, first off, I shouldn't say this, because I was going to say this Colts team isn't as good as they've looked. They've proven that they're as good as they look, so let's not go down that road, okay, Ev? Let's save yourself a little bit. The biggest thing that I want to note here is that we're going to see a lot of man coverage and a lot of blitz out of this Steelers team. Daniel Jones has been significantly worse against man so far this year. Versus zone, 75% completion percentage, 63 against man. DVOA, 44.1% drops against man. EPA goes from 40 down to 20. I do think that this is a nice spot to potentially have a nice little sneaky backdoor spot for the home team and a team that I do think has a good defense. Now, has the Steelers defense looked good yet? That's going to be a negative Ghost Rider. But I do think that this is much like we kind of talked about with, like the Patriots and the damn Falcons game. There seems like there's a little bit more writing on the wall than people may want to acknowledge. If this Steelers defense has been this bad, then why are we looking at a team that the Colts who are just blowing the doors off of everybody? Why is this line only 3? Is it because the Colts are on the road? I mean, maybe you can argue that, but they're 2-1 on the road this year. Their loss did come on the road, and it was against the Rams, a decent defense. So to me, yeah, I'm going to lean towards the Steelers here, plus the 3 points. The total at 50.5. Now this, and I even have it in my notes here, this is a weird indicator because as much as I'm like, oh, I think the Steelers defense shows up, if that were to be the case, I don't know if the odds makers put the total at 50.5. So that is a negative, could have egg on my face, right? But ultimately, we could still see a 27-24 game that goes over and the Steelers are hanging in this game, right? Because this Colts defense is not all that tremendous, and it's definitely not as good as people want to say, even with the points allowed and stuff, but their passing defense, I would put a big yikes there, and I think Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and just the passing attack in general could have a decent enough game in this spot. So give me the Steelers. I'll lean towards the over, sure. I don't mind the idea of an under. I'm kind of very much on the fence, Ev, in this one when it comes to a total. But I do like Aaron Rodgers and I do like DK Metcalf. I think they both could have decent games here, making this a close enough game for the Steelers to potentially win it, but, cover that 3 points, especially if you can get a 3.5 out there. I know. I'm crazy this week, guys. Guys, before we do continue on, I wanted to plug the merch here that we have on the channel. I'm rocking the Gambler, I think it's called Ocean Dye Collection. We only have a few of these left, but it's just one of the launches we have of the Gambler collections out there. Ton of new stuff on the site, like the Just Bet It structured hat, which is really, really cool. I'll put some products right here on the screen. You guys can one click and get to the store. But if you want to make it hard on yourselves, because I know you're a bunch of grinders out there, fademe.store. Go type that into the URL. Also put it in the pinned comment, or GuyBostonSports.com/store. It'll all take you to the exact same place. Help support us and get some amazing merch at the same time. And I mean it, amazing merch. This stuff is like legitimate quality. This is not a crappy slapped on logo hat or anything like that. It's embroidered. Really cool stuff, guys. Go ahead and check it out again. Fademe.store. All right, here's one that I'm not going absolutely crazy on. We have the Titans taking on the Chargers, and I do like the Chargers in this situation. I don't think it's the best Cam Ward situation, and the streets are rumbling. There's some murmurs out there. People are calling me the Cam Ward whisperer because we've either hit his over or under in multiple weeks this year. It really isn't that difficult. Against bad secondaries, we've taken his overs. Against good secondaries, we've taken his unders. But nonetheless, I do think that this is a Charger squad that can give him some trouble. They're going to play a lot of zone, so maybe if his decision-making's on in that spot, then sure, he might be okay. But I really don't see much of the run game helping him out. Obviously, this Chargers team, yeah, to some degree, they've looked poor against the run. They've looked good against the run, kind of depending on their competition. But are we really going to sit there and think that Tony Pollard is going to be all that phenomenal? Especially Tony Pollard, who is actually on the injury report as of right now. So to me, I sit there and I'm like, well, if they're not going to get support from the run game, then we could have some serious issues from the side of things on Cam Ward. So yeah, I'm starting off with I like the Chargers, but I also really don't mind the idea of Cam Ward and his passing yards under. Right now, you can get that. Let's get an updated line on this. I took this on H2H for the fade me round, so if you guys did tune into that, you saw that. But right now, Cam Ward's, in terms of his passing yards, under 211.5. I think I snagged it at 214.5 earlier in the week. You can still get actually under 220.5 on FD. That might be something that we end up jumping on board with there. Cam Ward's under in passing yards. Don't mind the Titans team total under either. Clearly, I'm not the biggest Titan fan this week. Not that I've ever really been the biggest Titan fan. All right, next up, both these squads coming off the bye. It's a tough one to predict here because neither one of these offenses has really looked all that tremendous, right? You have the Raiders and Ashton Genty and the Geno Smith experiment, I almost want to call it here. But now Trevor Lawrence gets to at least see a team that plays like exclusively zone in the Raiders, and I think Trevor Lawrence will have a big enough day. So yeah, like I mentioned, this is a tough one because both teams can be super volatile on both the defensive and offensive end. But I like the Jags' run defense. I like the idea of Trevor Lawrence being able to pass in this zone situation. So I'm going to lean towards the Jags here. -2.5 just doesn't seem like it's a big enough number. I also don't mind the idea of Trevor Lawrence in terms of passing touchdowns. I think that, you're going to get a decent enough number in terms of the odds, which right now is passing touchdowns. We just had it up. I got to find it here. Is passing touchdowns for +105 over on Novig right now, over 1.5. Has he done that very often? No, he's done it twice this season. So I do get it if someone's not liking that, but I just think that this is one of his easier matchups. 229.5 for his passing yards, also something that I could get behind here. I think that this is a decent enough spot for him to go out there and pass on this team. We just saw Patrick Mahomes throw for almost 290 on this Raiders squad. Cam Ward, speak of the devil, threw for 222, right? So I think that we could see Trevor Lawrence look okay. And for right now, over 229.5 for -111. Actually, 227.5 is 224.5 you can get. So yeah, you can even knock this thing down over on FD. 224.5 seems like a good number. So give me the Jags. I'll say, team total over for them as well. And then I do like the idea of Trevor Lawrence here in this spot performing. So that might be a final play from a player prop perspective as well. All right, we got the Rams taking on the Saints. Biggest thing to note here is that the Saints are starting the rookie, Tyler Show, I believe his name is. I obviously get why this spread is at 14, right? It's a really, really big number. The total at 43.5 doesn't tell me it's going to be a massively high-scoring game, which does make me shake in my boots a little bit if I were to like the Rams, because how do you cover 2 touchdowns in a game that could be low-scoring? But then you look at where the team totals are and everything like that, and it's just expected that the Rams carry most of the water here, which makes sense, right? They just played Jacksonville a couple weeks ago, and 35-7 was that final score, so I do get it. Maybe the Rams are some sort of a parlay piece, kind of like we talked about with the Packers and that type of a thing. In terms of a defensive scheme, I think that Matthew Stafford should be able to beat that New Orleans zone. The blitz could get us a little dicey, but this has been like an unfulfilled blitz from the Saints. They blitz a ton, 6th most in the entire league. They're not getting home very often when you look at it from a pressure rate, time to throw, QB hit percentage, adjusted sack rate. Nothing's all that tremendous, right? And throw in the fact that, okay, maybe you could look at the Saints run game that, is that a hole in the, I shouldn't even say that because the Rams run game's been pretty damn good, but against outside zone, inside zone, the Rams have actually been a little soft. Well, the Saints barely run those types of runs. They almost exclusively run man scheme. This is a top 10 team in the Rams in terms of stopping that run style. So it's all Rams for me, but I don't know about laying -14. I think there's a lot of other value spots out there. Some of the psycho spots that I mentioned, perhaps. So maybe the Rams in some sort of a parlay and their team total over, but I don't think we're going to find too much here that looks good. Maybe this is a nice Kyron Williams game. That's something that we could look at. Let me take a peek at what his line. We didn't even have this prepared in terms of what we're looking at, but I could see the I could see the Rams getting up and obviously running the ball after that. 75.5 rushing yards from him. It's kind of high. He hasn't done it in 3 weeks, but against this Saints team, I mean, Sean Tucker hit his over, Mongai hit his over, DeAndre Swift ran for 124. Maybe that's a look. There's a lot of maybes in this one. All right, potentially, honestly, it's probably not even potential. The game of the week here, right? The Bills taking on the Chiefs. Right now, this Chiefs team sitting at 5-3. The Bills at 5-2. Bills finally getting off that losing train. They lost 2 straight games to New England. That'd be bad if they lost New Orleans. I think they beat them handily, right? To New England and then to the Falcons. They beat the Panthers. We already kind of talked about that earlier in the show. Handily last week, 40-9. Kansas City has now won 5 of their last 6 games. They've won 3 straight games. And you could say, oh, did they beat that great of competition? Well, yeah, they smacked Detroit. I think that's probably the biggest thing to note here. Now, looking at this from a, what's going to happen perspective. The Bills play a lot of zone. I'm trusting Patrick Mahomes against zone 9.9 times out of 10. The Kansas City Chiefs play a ton of man. Josh Allen isn't all that great against man. I do think that Kansas City's pass rush can get to Allen to some degree as well, and this Bills run game has really struggled. I'm starting to see a little life in the Kansas City side of things, so I know that it is in Buffalo, and I get it, and this is like a rematch game just because, obviously, the way that playoff game ended, and how even this is, by the way. In the last 10 meetings of these two squads, 5-5, both straight up and against the number, but I just think that this game, I would say the coaching and Patrick Mahomes may be a little bit more prime for. I will admit, though, that zone versus man for the two quarterbacks is like the number one thing that I'm taking a peek at. You're going to give me a lot of zone and not like a crazy amount of pressure. They probably will pressure, but I'm hoping this offensive line stays up. You give me a lot of zone, Patrick Mahomes can carve it up. I shouldn't say not a lot of pressure because I don't have the number in front of me. I should have the dashboard up. Buffalo is going to be pressuring. But overall, the zone versus man split is realistically what I'm focusing on here. So give me the Chiefs, probably just on the money line. I don't think that 1.5 points, that just seems like you could get gotcha right there. In terms of the total, 52.5. I kind of like the under. Is that crazy? Is that worthy? I'm not going to try to sound the psycho alert alarm because both these defenses I mentioned, I do think are decent enough. Now, the offenses are very good, but the only thing that lacks truly on the Buffalo side of things, I would say, is the run game. And it's not like the Chiefs have had the most spectacular run game. I did give them credit in saying that they're starting to get things going, maybe with like a nice split between Hunt and Pacheco and that type of thing. But I do still think that, these teams can make stops when it counts. So I'm going to lean under 52.5. This game is the type of game, and I tell you guys all the time on the channel that you could make an argument either way. If you're at a bar saying, oh, I like the Chiefs, and, and someone's like, I like the Bills, and you call that person a dummy for liking the Bills plus the 1.5 in this game, you're probably the dummy, because you can make an argument on both sides. There's no need to be like, how could you? That's a stupid take. There ain't no stupid take in this game. So if you like the over, the under, go with it. Don't let me talk you off it, but I'm going to lean Chiefs as well as the under. Hand up. Remember when I slipped up and said that the Bills probably won't bring too much pressure or whatever my words were? Yeah, they're only the number 1 pressure rate team in the league at 37.61%. Good call, F. Hey, I put the hand up, right? Taking accountability. All right, guys, we have Sunday Night Football here. If you guys are looking for a more in-depth breakdown of this game, Tassos does the Sunday Night Football breakdowns each and every week, so make sure to tap into that. But we have Washington taking on Seattle now. I guess the good news is that Washington does expect Jaden Daniels, obviously, to hopefully come back. I think I saw that he's questionable. That's going to be a big deal. Do we have an update on that? Jaden Daniels doesn't even carry an injury designation into the weekend. So he'll be back. What I think this comes down to, though, is the defense overall. And I do think Seattle's defense is one of the better ones in the league. And now Jaden Daniels been injured, so let's be honest, right? And at least call that out. But where has this Washington team really excelled? It's been on the ground. Number 1 in terms of rushing yards and yards per carry is this Seattle defense. So I think that they go in there and make sure that, Ja'Cory Krosky, Merritt Bill doesn't do much. Jaden Daniels doesn't do much on the ground. You're going to need to pass all over him, all over this team. And I also like the idea of, the Seattle team getting home to Jaden Daniels. This offensive line has not been all that tremendous, right? So I like the idea of that spot. Now, one thing I will say, and I'm going to give I guess the quarterback's a fair shake here because Jaden Daniels tears up zone. Seattle does play zone. Sam Darnold struggles against man. Washington does play man. So I guess that is worth noting. But I'm backing the Seattle defense here, not so much the offense overall, even though I do think that this offense could be decent enough. And I like both tight ends. I think we can look at AJ Barner. You can look at Zach Ertz in this spot. Neither one of these teams has been all that great against tight ends through the air so far this season. So I'm going to lean Seattle, those player props that I mentioned. In terms of a total, it got me shaking a little bit because I do think that we could look at like a Washington team total under or something like that. But the fact that this is up at 47.5, it almost tells me that odds makers, bookmakers, like they don't think that this Washington offense is going to struggle all that much. So I'm going to stick to my guns and think that, Seattle's defense shows up, and I'm going to look at, the under as well as the Washington team total under. But I just wanted to mention that because that does scare me a little bit. But I'm trusting what I have in front of me because I obviously know better than them, right? That's why we have a brand called Fade Me. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's show. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And I have a question for you. This is going to help me understand who is, staying till the end of the video and everything. I want to know who your favorite team is. We haven't really done this. We've done it for the NBA and MLB, but who is your favorite NFL team? What is like the demographic of favorite team in terms of what this audience is and the great community we're building? So let me know down in the comments. Let me know your favorite team. Make sure to say like my favorite team is, because if you just say like Broncos, people are going to start thinking you're taking the Broncos today, which if you're a fan, you might be. But ultimately, I'm looking for, my favorite team, just so I can kind of get a sense. Love reading those comments and everything like that. So yeah, go ahead and drop that in the comments. We'll catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.